Diets and workouts, you've done the work, so why can't you get to your goal weight? That's because up to 70% of your weight is predetermined by your genetics. So while you've been told that it's all about your willpower, you're actually fighting your biology. Don't do it alone. Found's doctor-designed program uses medication as part of a treatment plan that targets your body's unique biological needs, so that your body works with you and not against you. Take the quiz at joinfound.com to see if Found's weight loss program is right for you.
This is GoPowercat.com publisher Tim Fitzgerald. Thank you for listening to this Powercat podcast. Make sure you never miss an episode of the Powercat podcast by subscribing on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn, or your favorite podcast network. And if you enjoy this podcast, please consider becoming a subscriber to GoPowercat.com. We cover the Wildcats like no one else, with our VIP customers enjoying one-of-a-kind coverage from our team of professional journalists. And sign up today for an annual subscription to GPC and grab a 30% discount on your first year. And now here's the Powercat Podcast.
The following is a GoPowercat.com and Spirit Street production. You've discovered your link to GoPowercat.com's Powercat Pregame Podcast, presented by Robbins Motor Company, and it starts right now. Now, let's go to the WTC gig-powered studios. Here's your host, GoPowercat.com publisher, Tim Fitzgerald.
Following a hard-fought 24-17 victory over TCU last week, Kansas State welcomes in number 5 Oklahoma to Manhattan for an 11 a.m. contest on Saturday at Bill Snyder Family Stadium. The game will air on ABC and can be heard across the 39-station K-State Sports Network, with Wyatt Thompson on play-by-play, former K-State quarterback Stan Weber as analyst, and our buddy Matt Walters on the sideline providing all the calls of the action in the contest. Well, that win over TCU last week got the Wildcats over the hump in Big 12 play, moving them to 4-2 on the season and 1-2 in Big 12 action, providing Chris Klieman with his first conference victory. Welcome to GoPowercat.com's Powercat Pregame Podcast, sponsored by Robbins Motor Company. K-State fans, visit the Robbins Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram Fiat location on Anderson Avenue in Manhattan for an exciting test drive. Robbins Motor Company, title sponsor of the Powercat Pregame Podcast. Quarterback Skylar Thompson, who now has 4 game-winning drives in the fourth quarter or later in his career, has thrown for 994 yards and 7 touchdowns with 1 interception this season. The K-State defense enters the week ranked highly in many statistical categories, including third down defense. The Wildcats have surrendered only 2.7 third down conversions per game this year to rank second in the nation, behind only Wisconsin at 2.1. Sophomore defensive end Wyatt Hubert leads the team with 3 sacks so far this season. Oklahoma enters the game ranked 5th in the country and is led by Heisman Trophy candidate Jalen Hurts at quarterback. The Sooners defeated West Virginia last week 52-14 to improve to 7-0. They enter the game with the number 1 offense in the nation in both yards and points. Hurts leads the team in rushing and passing and has combined for 30 touchdowns, 20 passing, and 10 rushing through 7 games. C.D. Lamb is a Blitnikoff Award candidate at receiver and currently has 31 catches for 681 yards and 10 touchdowns. Defensively, Kenneth Murray leads a revamped and aggressive OU defense with 51 tackles and 7.5 tackles for loss. Oklahoma owns a 7-game winning streak in Manhattan, a streak that nearly was snapped 2 years ago with a 42-35 contest in 2017. The Wildcats scored a game-tying touchdown with 2:25 left in the game, but Oklahoma went 76 yards in 11 plays and scored the game-winning touchdown with 7 seconds remaining. This Oklahoma team is a little bit different. These Sooners play great defense, but the headliner for OU is once again a quarterback, this time Jalen Hurts. A running and throwing football whirlwind, and here's what K-State coach Chris Klieman had to say about the Oklahoma quarterback.
He's just so patient, and he makes the game look so easy. And we all know the game is not easy, and that's the thing that I marvel at. He's a winner. The kid's a just flat-out winner. He did it at the SEC level. He's doing it at the Big 12 level. He's going to do it at the next level on Sundays. Just an unbelievable talent that seems like, in my opinion, a really humble guy that just loves to play the game.
And now it's time to get into the roundtable session, your GoPowercat roundtable session, as we are brought to you by Robbins Motor Company. A little change up this week. Riley Gates is in Kansas City for the Big 12 Basketball Media Day, so we uninvited him to the party. We have Michael Goins joining us for the first time, making his podcast debut. Go, how you doing?
Doing well. Uninvited Riley. That's pretty serious stuff.
Yeah, we had uninvited him. We have, of course, Ryan Wallace and D-Scott Fritchen, the regulars, here as we talk about the Cats and the Sooners in a game that K-State, unless something goes really awry, will not win. I know the players hate hearing it, and they have to go out there and try to win this game. Ryan Wallace, in my book, this is the most complete Oklahoma team in a lot of years. I think if there weren't a couple other really stinking good teams this year, this would be a shoo-in to win a national championship. But right now we're talking about a team that's ranked third or fourth in the country.
Yeah, I mean, I've never been the biggest Jalen Hurts guy, the biggest believer in him when he was at Alabama, but there's something about putting a guy that is smart and that doesn't make a ton of mistakes, and, oh, by the way, can, run like a freight train in Lincoln Riley's system. You don't ask him to do a whole lot because you're going to surround him with immensely talented players, a ginormous offensive line. And so, like we've seen in years before, Fitz, it's like the same OU offense that everyone's come to know and hate, unless you're a Crimson and Cream fan. But then also, you have a defense now under Alex Grinch that is playing sound, that is attacking, that covers sideline to sideline with all the athletes that they have. So I would agree with you. I think this is the most well-balanced, well-oiled Oklahoma machine that we've seen in a number of years.
You and I are alike. I was not a Jalen Hurts believer. I thought, he was kind of a product of the system. He lost his job at Alabama. He's a really good player had good players around him in Alabama. He's a better quarterback at Oklahoma. I don't know what Lincoln Riley does. This guy can make quarterbacks better because Kyler Murray as a senior was a lot better than any of us expected. It's really impressive to watch. And Jalen Hurts comes pretty close to Michael Bishop standards for me. He can run, he can throw, and he's got some talent around him. And to go with that, Michael, K-State can't tackle. They've had problems tackling, and Jalen Hurts can make a good football player miss him. It's really worrisome.
Yeah, it really is. I know there was a play last Saturday against West Virginia. He got out in the open, and they spread the field with 4 wide receivers. He got one-on-one with one West Virginia linebacker and just made him look silly.
Yeah.
And goes into the end zone untouched. So he can make you look silly a lot.
It really is something amazing to watch, and he's going to cause problems. And as much as he can throw, and as much as I love Lamb and the other receivers that this team has, it's really his legs, D. Scott. It's his legs that concern me because that can just put you on blast. You end up on a highlight reel.
Yeah, for as much as the talk has been about his passing efficiency rating, his legs are burning teams right now. He's 8th in the nation, averaging over 8.3 yards per carry. K-State, on the other hand, is 128th in the nation. They are dead last among Power 5 teams in allowing a whopping 5.8 yards per carry. And you look at what Max Duggan was able to do against Kansas State, and that becomes kind of a scary proposition. The other thing with Hurts is the ability to break off explosive plays. He has 13 rushes so far of more than 20 yards this season. When you look at Baker Mayfield and Kyler Murray in their Heisman Trophy years and combine those two, they produced 15. He has 13 in 7 games. It's amazing.
It really is amazing how good this offense can be. And Wally, they made mistakes against Texas. They really did. They had some errors against Texas and opened up the door, and still Texas wasn't able to win that game, even though it was more competitive than what I thought it would be. It didn't feel competitive at the end of the day. Now, here's the thing that intrigues me about K-State's defense. For all the times I've been upset with the defense, I've cursed at players for not tackling well, for them being exposed in the middle of the defense, particularly earlier in the year, to the running game. They hold teams down in points. Is there a point level in which K-State can hold Oklahoma that K-State can exceed in scoring? That's my problem, is I don't see them scoring enough points on the defense to outscore even an inefficient version of this Oklahoma offense.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that you asked that, because just this afternoon I went back and was kind of looking for that magic number of, if K-State can hold Oklahoma to X points, they seem to struggle when they're held under that point margin. And when I went back, there are times that Oklahoma has gone into double overtime and only scored, 30-some points and still won. I do think 30 seems to be a number that you shoot for, and that seems to be kind of a common number to shoot for with just about any Big 12 offense. But I'm with you. I mean, the thought of this K-State defense, although they do have the number one scoring defense, holding this Oklahoma offense just doesn't feel like a realistic possibility, because, when I think about it, and Goins wrote a great article earlier this week about Kansas State needing bigger plays. If there's ever a team to kind of look at that can get big plays, although they run a totally different offense, it's Oklahoma. I mean, they're at .483 explosive drive rate, according to a group called Football Outsiders, and that pretty much ranks the percentage of offensive drives that average at least 10 yards per play. K-State is at .057. So, I mean, when you think about it, I love what the K-State defense is doing. I love the mentality that Scotty Hazelton has brought to this group. I think even though their numbers are down from a rush defense standpoint, I think the defensive line has been consistent. They're not putting a lot of pressure, but they've been able to bend without breaking, while also at least hurrying quarterbacks, even if they're not getting sacks. But my problem here, Fitz, is it goes back to the Oklahoma State game. There was so much firepower individually in the Oklahoma State offense. I don't want to really imagine what that means for an offense like Oklahoma that's more balanced and has more explosive players than the Cowboys did.
Yeah, I agree. This is a good scoring defense for Kansas State, D. Scott. Chris Klieman talks about it all the time. It's about the points. And he's right. It's about the points. Is it possible that K-State can hold them down in points, force them into field goals, and create some frustration on that offensive side of the ball for OU?
Gosh, you look at it historically, Fitz, and Oklahoma's played some pretty talented K-State teams over the last 7 years. Not great teams, but some pretty good ones. The last 7 times that they visited Manhattan, Oklahoma has scored an average of 46 points against Kansas State. So scoring points has not been a problem for Oklahoma. But you look at this K-State defense, and it's surprising to know that despite all the yards they're giving up or have given up, that K-State has allowed its fewest points at the midpoint of the season since 2012, which was a really good defense. But you look at this Oklahoma offense, it is so hard to bring them down. And you look at K-State, giving up 12 plays of 30-plus yards, 6 of 40-plus yards, and 2 plays longer than 50 yards in 6 games. And the explosive plays, I think, are going to bite K-State.
Explosive plays in all flavors, running the ball, throwing the ball. They got 2 receivers averaging 22 yards or more per catch. How is that even possible?
Well, and ironically enough, it is accomplished in part through the running game. I watched some tape from the West Virginia game. They're running a couple of play-action passes. Mountaineers suck up on the play-action. Boom, the receivers are right behind them and have one-on-one matchups and just all kinds of territory in which to run.
I don't know what you do with them. If you try to focus in on Jalen Hurts in that running game, and you go, the thought of going man against them is just frightening. The thought of sitting back in zone is frightening. Everything's frightening. I'm frightened. I'm scared of this game, Ryan Wallace. And really, for me, this is a game about Kansas State trying to get better, trying to do some things that make themselves feel like they've got some momentum even after a defeat going forward, because there's some very winnable games. And for me, that really starts with this running game. The offensive line is going to go up against a really fast, destructive defensive front seven for Oklahoma. If they can do some things against that group, that's a positive message. They've got to run the ball better, period.
Yeah, I mean, they have to. And I think what's been surprising for me to watch this K-State offense over the course of the last few weeks is obviously, you were without Malik Knowles for a week, and you've been without Jordan Brown for, I think, 2 weeks now. And maybe he comes back on Saturday. We'll have to see. That would help a lot. But it doesn't matter really about the weapons as much as it does with the offensive line, because if they can get a ground game going, it'll open up the passing game. I mean, we've said this ad nauseum for the last 3-4 weeks. But what's surprising to me is the interior of that offensive line, a guy like Adam Holtorf that had been so rock solid early on, getting kind of pushed back by TCU last weekend. A guy like Scott Franson and that group, the tackles that have shown that they can do good things at times, over the course of their career. In France's case, consistently have just completely imploded. But here's the odd thing to me, Fitz, is, with TCU and Baylor, there were some guys that stood across from the offensive line that I think from an individual standpoint were a lot better, just as far as athletes. From an NFL pro perspective, possibly better than what K-State has on their offensive line. And yet with OU, from an individual standpoint, there are a lot of winnable matchups. The difference is what you said. They kind of come at you in waves. It's not just one or two guys. It's, linebackers, the D-line, they play that kind of 3-3-5. They'll bring in a nickel to kind of wreak havoc. So it's winnable individually, as long as the offensive line kind of gets a hat on a hat. And if they don't, then the ground game goes to kaput, and we've kind of seen what this passing attack can do with a limited, although he'll be a little bit stronger, Malik Knowles.
Very true. This is an aggressive Oklahoma defense without going blitz happy. They're aggressive. They like to get after you. They fly to the ball. Maybe that's something K-State can leverage against this defense, but this is the first time in a long time, God bless Mike Stoops, that Oklahoma has had a top 25 defense. This is a legitimate big-time defense. And for all we talk about Lamb and Hurts and the other offensive weapons, if they win a national championship, it is the Grinch who stole the crystal ball, because they are legitimate on defense.
Absolutely. Couldn't say it better. This team has that potential to win a national championship this year because they have a good defense. When you look at what the job that Grinch has done, 23rd in scoring defense, 28th in total defense. Last season, the Sooners finished 101st in scoring defense and 114th in total defense. It's just amazing. Listen to some of these numbers. They forced 6 turnovers, 8 turnovers on downs, and 44 punts through 7 games, while recording 58 tackles for a loss and 22 sacks and 27 3-and-outs. My gosh.
That's phenomenal numbers you're talking about there, and they're not doing it through smoke and mirrors. You're talking about a fast front 3, front 4, and Kenneth Murray in the middle just really flies to the ball.
Murray just can dominate you. He gets at you almost suddenly, just immediately. He's right there in your business. It's fun watching Oklahoma play defense. It was funny to watch Oklahoma play defense for a while, Ryan Wallace, but now it's fun. An area that K-State made a lot of traction in last week, and I thought it was a really positive sign. If you're having problems on offense and sometimes on defense with tackling, you got to be good in special teams. Ryan Wallace, they beat TCU with special teams. Yeah, they might have been even in this or lost in that, but they emphatically won special teams. And one of the things, I'm throwing you a curveball here with topics, I love Joshua Youngblood on returns. I know Devin Anktel is an incredible punter. The block punt was incredible. But Youngblood just adds something in there that they haven't had with Knowles injured.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, real quick, just to go back. One thing that helps make defenses fun to watch is the fact that Oklahoma can tackle. That does help. K-State continues to be plagued by the missed tackles, but they were a little bit better against TCU. But as far as special teams go, it's interesting that you bring up Josh Youngblood, because that kind of change that the staff made to kind of get Josh more involved as opposed to Phillip Brooks seems to have paid dividends. Joshua just seems to have a natural kind of uncanny ability to read things at the rate at which he's running, which is extremely fast. He's a guy that is thick enough to shed blocks and to bounce around, has a really good balance. I mean, this was a guy that did play some Wildcat quarterback in high school, so it's not surprising that he knows how to read those things. And obviously, as a receiver, has really good hands too, so he's not as prone to coughing the ball up as we've seen with Phillip Brooks earlier this season. But yeah, for all the love that Devin Ankle gets, we kind of expected him to be this good. We were talking about him preseason, as I remember Riley saying he might be, a sleeper candidate for All Big 12. Possibly even getting some All-American nods. Joshua Youngblood, though, on the other hand, his move as a return man seems to kind of awoken a Kansas State special teams return unit that was fairly fairly mediocre up until that change.
Late in that game against TCU, they put Youngblood and Knowles back together. And I'm thinking that's about as explosive a pairing as I remember since Tyler Lockett left Kansas State. Who do you kick it to? I mean, Knowles has already taken one to the house. And Youngblood, you can just watch him, and you're like, it's going to happen. Someone's going to miss an assignment on the coverage unit, and he's going to run right through that gap. It's going to be an intriguing part of the game. Unfortunately, I think K-State will be fielding a lot of kickoffs after Oklahoma scores, so it'll give K-State an opportunity. This series is so weird because K-State has shown an ability to beat Oklahoma, but typically in Norman. Oklahoma's been more dominant in Manhattan than in Norman, which is hard to explain. And they've got a winning streak here, Scott.
Yeah.
It's odd. You think you remember these wins over Oklahoma, but they're winning in Manhattan and often doing it with great emphasis, just pulling away and making it look silly.
That win over Oklahoma in 1996 in Manhattan was so big, and that's the last time that K-State beat Oklahoma in Manhattan, 1996.
1996.
Yes. They're in the midst of their longest home losing streak against an opponent since Nebraska won 17 straight in Manhattan between 1959 and 1996. It's pretty amazing. In Oklahoma, we haven't talked about this, not that it really matters, but Oklahoma's 22-game true road winning streak is currently the second longest since at least the end of World War II.
Well, they're really impressive this year. It's going to be fun to watch. Michael Goins, let's just say Oklahoma wins. Let's go out on a limb and say Oklahoma wins this game. What is your best case scenario for K-State in defeat? I'm not a moral victory guy, but you need to be realistic too.
Right. I think you would really like to see K-State get some offense going. Oklahoma's going to score. You guys were talking about keeping it in the 30 range earlier. I think for that to happen, you've got to get some turnovers. You got to have some special teams plays. But more than anything, I think you'd like to see K-State put up 27, 28 points and get that offense rolling and show some real capability in the run game and some diversification to spread the ball around, run some misdirection, and confuse them.
Yeah, I think there should be enough on film in Oklahoma's defense to find some things that might work against them, and executing it's another thing. I'll bring the same question to you, Ryan Wallace. Even in defeat, how do you measure progress for these Kansas State Wildcats?
Going back to the missed tackles, for me, it's just not allowing it's one thing to have a scheme beat you where, Oklahoma runs just a better play and they've got guys that beat you. It's another thing when, you've got 2 or 3 broken or missed tackles that lead to, say, a 70, 80-yard touchdown score. So from a defensive standpoint, it'd be nice to see them limit the huge plays from Oklahoma. And offensively, like I was saying, it just goes back. I'd like to see this offense stay on the field, get into more third and manageable, which we did see a little bit more of last week, but get the running game going and not see this offensive line get pushed back into Skylar Thompson so much where, he ends up having to scramble and be, competing with James Gilbert as the rushing yards leader for the day on Saturday. Here's a question that I want to throw back to you guys, though, as we kind of finish talking about offense. Do we think that Kansas State will score a point of any variety in the first quarter on Saturday? And I ask that because only one team has done it this year on Oklahoma, and that's score in the first quarter, and it was Kansas.
Yeah, that's the other side of it, is Oklahoma came out against Kansas not exactly locked and loaded, and Kansas had some effectiveness. I think we can agree that KU might have more offensive weapons right now than Kansas State. While I think Kansas State's the better team overall, I do like some of those weapons. They certainly have a good running back. They got a good receiver. They got a quarterback who's finding a way to play within himself. But you're right. I'm not sure Kansas State will unless they come out and assert themselves physically like they get against Mississippi State. A good defensive front. They didn't run for a lot of yards, but they set a tone, and I think that's really the key. I really do. What do you think, Mike? Think they're going to score in the first quarter?
I would have to go with no.
Yeah, probably no. D. Scott is going to say...
I'm seeing 2 3-and-outs, so no.
No, yeah.
That's a no for me.
If they go 2 3-and-outs, then you're going to be down at least 17-0 in that first quarter, if not worse.
Could be 21-zip.
Yeah, it could be really bad. I usually have an Oklahoma or an opponent person come in right now and talk a little bit about the opponent, but do we really need to hear from an Oklahoma expert to tell us that Oklahoma's really stinking good and Jalen Hurts might win the Heisman Trophy? So let's keep it right here, and I want to ask you a little bit about recruiting Ryan Wallace and maybe open it up to the other guys. First of all, let me cover this. Dorian Stevens, we've been awaiting his commitment. He's a 21 kid out of Kansas City. We've been waiting, and we knew it was coming. He didn't want to let it out. He wanted to let it out himself, and we try to be really good. If the young man says, I'm going to commit on this time, we wait. We don't hint. We don't give it away. It's his moment. He chose his moment in the middle of the winning drive for Kansas State. And I'm like, kid, what are you doing? Hold on a little bit. Get to the post game. But that's a nice pickup for 2021 on the outside.
Yeah, I can't bash Dorian too much because he is, the pride of my alma mater, Blue Valley High School. But, yeah, definitely a little odd on the timing. But that's the thing about Dorian, though, is, he beats to his own drum. He's not a big fan, I don't think, of the recruitment, which is why we see him pledging to Kansas State so early amidst a lot of interest. We're talking Iowa, Iowa State, Kansas, Oklahoma. Was very interested with him early on. Didn't really feel the need to pull the trigger yet. They kind of wanted to see how he developed as a senior. But still, that speaks volumes to the type of ceiling that Dorian Stevens has. When I saw him earlier this year, he's definitely starting to fill out. There are some people around the Blue Valley Tiger program that think he's not even done growing yet. It seems like he still has some progress to do and will fill out, and maybe we're looking at a 6'4", 6'5" wide receiver that is an outstanding athlete on the track side of things too. So, he's going to be the type of receiver K-State needs in a I don't want to say Malik Knowles. I actually compare him more to like a Deontay Burton because it's going to take him longer than a guy like Malik to get on the field. But we saw Deontay Burton start to kind of get his feet wet and slowly, by the time he was a senior, become a really effective receiver in the Big 12.
It was kind of funny. It just struck me as ironic after waiting that long and holding everyone's suspense when he chose to do it. It's kind of like finding out the young lady's dog just died, so you ask her on a date. It's like, no, wrong time. Don't do that. No, wrong time. Okay, let's go to junior college recruiting because I'm intrigued by this. Chris Klieman is not a guy that recruits junior college players. He's not. He's talked about it. I've asked him about it. D. Scott's asked him about it. It's just not something he wants to do. but they have to, particularly on the offensive line. But this week they picked up a commitment from Robert Hintz II. I love your comparison that you just popped out on Twitter with who he reminds you of. Get into that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, when you watch Robert Hintz II on film out of Northwest Mississippi Community College, he screams Tank Reese, who was another former community college addition by Bill Snyder, in the early 2000s out of Hutchinson. And they play very athletic for what you assume a defensive lineman to be. We as Kansas State followers, fans, have kind of come to get used to the Violet Tuies, the Trey Deshaun's, Travis Britzes of the world that are gap pluggers. They're not going to pressure. They kind of stay between the tackles, and once things get outside, that's for the guys behind them to clean up. With Robert Hintz, he's a lot like Tank Reese. He makes plays all over the place. He's probably not as stout, as physically strong as Tank Reese was, but he's longer. At 6'1", he goes about 275, 280 pounds right now, and just is absolutely violent, ferocious with his hand. Can get through and sneak by double teams. He's got good bend, and like I said, can really run down the ball carrier. He's the type of guy that Kansas State absolutely had to have with Trey Deshaun, Jordan Mitty, Joe Davies, and all those three moving on. They needed somebody that can come in and be of experience right away because they have some other asset at defensive tackle, but they might not be where the coaching staff needs them to be. You would expect Robert Hintz will be that, fit that bill come next fall.
What I loved about him and watching his highlights is he's sudden and he'll get underneath kind of the blocking area of an offensive lineman. He'll just run underneath them before they even knew what happened. He's so quick, and like you said, he's got bend. He can get low. He can get around you. And you got to be a trickster. You can't just be a power guy in the middle unless you're really good at it. And when you're that size as he is, you got to trick people. That would be recruit number one from the junior college ranks. Correct me if I'm wrong. For the
Correct.
2020 class. When we asked Chris Klieman about it, D. Scott, he said, "Well, I'm not going to do anything like 8." And I'm like, "Oh, that's not that bad." But if you want to set that as the high end, but K-State really did back off of it. I can see them as they progress into this. They start to really think about it. Well, we need an offensive lineman. Okay, we need a second offensive lineman. We got a D tackle. We could probably use a defensive end. We've got George Qualls out there at receiver. Let's go get him. And all of a sudden they're at 5 or 6. And they're like, how did this happen? But come on. That's just one of the benefits Kansas State has. Junior college kids want to come here. It's a haven for great players. I say don't get carried away Ron Prince style, but go do it.
Yeah, I do think that there's got to be a little bit of sense of urgency when they look at the depth chart for 2020, 2021, and just kind of look ahead that they do need a couple guys, and it'll benefit the program, I think, in many ways. And we've seen it before with the Bill Snyder program, just the way that they're able to groom these kids, bring them in, groom them, and they're able to compete, a year and a half at a very capable level in Big 12 play. I think there can be some diamonds in the rough that they are able to develop into that all Big 12 type body. Yeah. We'll see what they're able to do, but I think it'll be interesting to follow Klieman and his philosophy and which way he decides to go in the future.
Do you think it's going to evolve? Do you think he's going to be here a little while, Michael, and think, yeah, you got to supplement with the junior college guys to keep up in this conference?
Yeah, I think that's probably the case, especially with it right in your backyard. I think the imperative thing is to get guys that in year one can step right in the field, that are body-wise, mentally-wise, that they are ready to go and ready to make an impact by mid-year of year one.
Right. Is George Qualls that kind of player at receiver, Ryan Wallace?
I think George Qualls is a must. In speaking with him, he's a 6'3", 6'4", former Missouri State high jumping champion who is now at Butler County Community College, is leading the league in touchdown receptions and is number 2 in receiving yards. So he's that big body that you feel like would complement a guy like Malik Knowles to a T, and really help stretch the field vertically, give K-State another playmaker. When I've talked to him, he's said over and over about what a Kansas State offer would mean to him. Right now, as it stands, it looks like the biggest offer on his plate is Akron. This is a recruitment that K-State could go in and win right now if they wanted to. My fear is that we're kind of seeing a tendency that we saw with Bill Snyder, which is kind of wait before they pull the trigger, at least on Qualls. And my fear is that by that point, there are going to be a lot of teams involved, because that's kind of the word I'm hearing out of Butler County, is that whether it's him, J.J. Crawford, the offensive tackle that K-State has offered, or Dawson DeForge, who's from right up the street in Wamego, now at Butler County. There are some big-name schools that are starting to creep into the conversation with these kids, Nebraska being one, that, you just hope K-State can lock down. Those three in particular would be enormous, because they play positions of need that would be bodies, as Golan said, that can come and play right away. So you just hope that you can see Kansas State lock up kids that are much like, from what I hear, Byron Pringle, hardworking kids that fit the Kansas State mold that, oh, by the way, want to be at Kansas State. So hopefully Chris Klieman and his staff know that and recognize that. I'm sure they do. There's a lot at play right now as far as they're limited on scholarships, at least the rest of the way, since they've filled out their class so good this early, that I think they just want to be careful. But you just hope that they're not too careful and let some guys slip through the cracks.
Yeah, I agree. At the end of the day, how many junior college offensive linemen? They get a lot of offers out there. How many in total will they bring in?
I'm thinking around 2. I think they'd like to. They're going to get one. Where that comes from, I'm not sure. They're going to get one, and it'll probably be an offensive tackle, or at least a player that can play offensive tackle. And then I think if they feel good, if they're in good shape and within striking distance of another, I think they'll pull out all the stops and try and get a second.
That'll be very interesting to track. And, of course, you can do that as a subscriber at GoPowercat.com, 30% off your annual subscription. Or if you want to go monthly, we'll give you that first month for $1. Sign up at GoPowercat.com. And that brings a close to our roundtable session. Ryan Wallace, thank you very much. D. Scott Fritchen, excellent as always. And Michael Goins, thanks for sitting in for Riley Gates. We never even missed him. We don't miss Riley at all. I can't emphasize that enough. Riley, we don't miss you. Riley's covering basketball for us and doing a great job up in Kansas City, and he'll be back in the fold here for this weekend's game. And we speed into break right now with the GoPowercat.com Powercat Pregame Podcast, sponsored by Robbins Motor Company. And on the other side, our analysts await Marcus Watts, Brien Hanley, and Kelly Stewart to break down the gambling front for the Cats and the Sooners, 11 a.m., Bill Snyder Family Stadium.
The experts from GoPowercat.com will return with more on the Powercat Pregame Podcast, presented by Robbins Motor Company.
Selling a little or a lot? Shopify helps you do your thing, however you cha-ching. Shopify is the global commerce platform that helps you sell at every stage of your business. From the launch your online shop stage, to the first real-life store stage, all the way to the did we just hit 1 million orders stage. Shopify's here to help you grow. Whether you're selling scented soap or offering outdoor outfits, Shopify helps you sell everywhere. From their all-in-one e-commerce platform to their in-person POS system, wherever and whatever you're selling, Shopify's got you covered. Shopify helps you turn browsers into buyers with the internet's best converting checkout. 15% better on average compared to other leading commerce platforms. And sell more with less effort thanks to Shopify Magic, your AI-powered all-star. Shopify powers 10% of all e-commerce in the U.S. And Shopify is the global force behind Allbirds, Rothy's, and Brooklinen, and millions of other entrepreneurs of every size across 175 countries. Plus, Shopify's award-winning 24/7 help is there to support your success every step of the way. Because businesses that grow, grow with Shopify. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/Odyssey Podcast, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/Odyssey Podcast now to grow your business, no matter what stage you're in. Shopify.com/Odyssey Podcast.
My days working, taking care of my little ones, can be a lot. I checked out care.com and it was so easy for me to find local, experienced, and background check sitters. Finding our babysitter was way more affordable than I thought. Care.com makes it super easy. Search for qualified candidates. You can view their profiles, read reviews and ratings, check their availability, send messages directly, and get the help that you need. Care.com should be every person's go-to.
We now send it back to the Powercat Podcast. Joining you once again, it's Tim Fitzgerald and GoPowercat football analyst Marcus Watts.
Welcome back to the Powercat Pregame Podcast, sponsored by Robbins Motor Company, as we take a look at Kansas State and Oklahoma, 11 a.m. at Bill Snyder Family Stadium. It is a mighty task for the Wildcats. The dedicated team of automotive professionals at Robbins, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Fiat will match you with a vehicle that suits your lifestyle and budget. Robbins Motor Company, title sponsor of the Powercat Pregame Podcast. Speaking of mighty task, we have finally connected on our day with Marcus Watts. Marcus, how are you?
Doing good.
How did the Cats, in your tenure at Kansas State, fare against the Oklahoma Sooners?
Not good.
No.
Not good. I had Adrian Peterson when I was there. So.
Oh, well, he didn't suck.
No, he didn't suck. So
Did you try to tackle him? Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah, I stuck him pretty good once. He's like, where did you come from?
That's what I love about the stuff like that the players say to each other that we don't hear.
Yeah, because we were running a spy, which we'll get into with what I think K-State's going to have to do with Jalen Hurts. But we ran a spy. It was like a cover 3, bring one safety down, and I spied Adrian Peterson. And everywhere he went, I went.
Does it work?
Does it work?
Yeah.
It can. You just got to have someone that's disciplined to do it.
Well, okay, that's not going to work for K-State. I say that jokingly, but if you're going to be the spy when you're in position, you got to make the play then.
Yeah, and you got to be able to tackle.
Right.
And you got to be able to, tackle well. And K-State has shown recently that they're struggling with the tackling, especially coming from the safety position. They just got to stop trying to make the big hit. I mean, when I was playing, my number one job was to get the guy down.
Exactly.
And so I was a below-the-waist tackler, unless it was a light-up and I knew that I was going to light the guy up. Then I would go high. But you just got to be smart about it. I mean, K-State safeties aren't big.
No.
And most of the running backs and even quarterbacks that they play against are bigger than them. Stop trying to make the big hit. Just grab them around the ankles, get them down.
That's exactly right. You get someone in the open field, you got to make sure you take out their center of gravity. Take out their legs or knock them off center. Trying to go for that big home run hit in the middle of the field, man, you
can't run without your feet. So
yeah,
that was my thing.
I've proven that.
Threw my body at their feet and they went down.
I remember that. Marcus Watts was like a torpedo when you tackled. It's like you'd be right off the top of the grass and just taking people out. It's very effective.
I mean, it's not sexy or anything. It's not the big hit, but it gets the job done. And that's what this team needs, especially in a game like this one coming up this weekend. The first guy there has to make the tackle. They cannot miss tackles in this game or it'll be a long, long day.
Yeah, we just had a roundtable session, a very long one, in the first half of this podcast, and that was my thing. Let's be honest. In all likelihood, K-State will lose this game. What positives can you take out of this? And one of them for me is being better tackling, because if you're not better in tackling, you're going to get clowned pretty bad by Jalen Hurts. So how would you approach this spy on Jalen Hurts?
Well, it's a spy, but it's a spy for coverage.
Okay.
So he can play the low zone. And then, if Jalen Hurts scrambles, you have somebody there to make the play. Or in the zone read, you have an extra guy to take on Jalen Hurts. And then you have your defensive end and even your linebackers take on the running back. And so it just gives you an extra guy down in the box. Does it put some strain? Yes, on the secondary, it can. But he can't be. The spy can't be aggressive. So you got to come down, behind the linebackers, 8 yards off the ball, when the ball snapped, and then shoot your gap if Jalen takes off. If he doesn't take off, you drop back in coverage.
Right.
And so a guy like Goolsby, I think, could pull that off because he's smart. The only thing that he's struggled with this year is his tackling, and his fits, and so that scares me a little bit. But I think if anybody can do it, he can.
Right. It'll be intriguing because it's pick your poison. That's the big cliche. I don't know what you give them. You try to go man on the outside. They've got great receivers in Lamb and Rambo, and you try to focus in on Jalen Hurts. They got running backs that can get you. It's really amazing. Their top rusher is Jalen Hurts, but they also have guys like Kennedy Brooks and Trey Sermon, and Trey Sermon's on his 19th year, I feel like. They've just got weapons. They got so many weapons, you forget they got those guys. And Hurts brings them all together. I've been saying it on the podcast. I'll say it later on when I talk to Kelly Stewart. The closest thing to Michael Bishop I've seen. The guy can play like a running back and throw the ball with a big arm like a quarterback. Should be able to. Jalen Hurts is the real deal, and they need him not to have a good day. If he has a good day, he will beat anyone, anywhere, because he's that athletic.
Yeah, you got to take one thing away, or try to take one thing away from Jalen Hurts. And honestly, I think the biggest thing that he can hurt you with is his running ability. And I think that's something you have to take away. Make him beat you passing, make him earn it. And I think that's what K-State's going to need to focus on in this game if they want to have a chance to be in the game. They just not give up the big plays. Yes, you're going to give up a few, but Oklahoma lives and strives off the big 50-yard pass, the 30, 40-yard runs. Just minimalize those and make Oklahoma earn it. They haven't really had to earn anything all year. Everything's just it's come so easy for them. But when you got guys like Jalen Hurts, Trey Sermon, CeeDee Lamb, it's very easy to do.
For Kansas State, they have given up big plays this year. Oklahoma State's a perfect example. But they didn't give up big plays that always went to the end zone. Some of them did, but they have suppressed points in a surprising manner, even when they're having problems on defense with tackling and Fitz. They still haven't converted those, or opposing teams haven't converted those into a lot of points. And that's really a key for Kansas State. Oklahoma's going to get plays. Don't let those big plays be scores. Frustrate them, make them earn them, make them kick some field goals if need be. Just kind of perpetuate them and almost let them wear themselves out so you can make some plays. And then offensively, Marcus, they've just got to be better. They've got to block better. This offensive line's been pitiful. Let's be blunt. They're just not playing up to their standards. And Kansas State needs to rediscover itself on offense. And if you can do it against Oklahoma, you should be able to convince yourself you can do it against anyone in this conference.
Yeah, there's probably only one guy on offense that's playing good, and that's Malik Knowles.
Mm-hmm.
And he's only, 70%?
Right.
Didn't even really play in the first half of the last game, and then comes out in the second half. I don't understand that very much, but hopefully he's able to go because it seems to be he's the only one that might be able to match up with the athleticism that Oklahoma has and be able to contest and actually get open and maybe make some plays. Other than that, what K-State's shown so far this year, especially over the last 3 or 4 weeks, it's not good. And Oklahoma's defense, they're a top 25 defense this year. They're a lot better than they have been in the past. Now they haven't really played a whole lot of, scary offenses. Texas doesn't even have that scary of an offense. So K-State's going to have to find something, have to sustain some drives, have some big 80, 90-yard drives, 14-play drives that take up 7-8 minutes. I mean, that's your only chance you're going to have in this game, is to keep the ball out of Oklahoma's hands. And then when Oklahoma has the ball, is frustrate them and make them earn those touchdowns, like you said, and not give up the big one-play 70-yard touchdown pass or 60-yard touchdown pass. Because a team that scores easy and keeps scoring easy, when they have to work for it, they'll get frustrated.
Right.
And that's something that you can do. And, obviously they've got some very, very good senior leadership on this team with Jalen Hurts and CeeDee Lamb. And, the coach for Oklahoma is, I mean, he's a genius. I don't know how he's still in college football. Probably not much longer. He'll be out of college football and in the pros. But he just seems to always call the right play at the right time, have his players in the right positions, and gets his playmakers the ball, and they make plays for him.
He elevates quarterbacks. There's no doubt about it. We saw it last year, and now this year. I wasn't a Jalen Hurts believer. I am now. Lincoln Riley knows how to get quarterbacks to play at the highest level. It's really, really impressive. Kansas State, I thought last week, showed some signs. Hey, we've got this and we've got that. And we start piecing things together. We got Joaquin Gill that can kind of get open and be sneaky. We got Nick Lenners who can find a seam and make a play. We still got Dalton Schoen. You had Malik Knowles playing. You got more of a big play guy. You've got things that you can kind of piece together, but what they absolutely have to have is some threat in the running game from the running backs. You can't quarterback draw Skylar Thompson every play in this game, even if that's what they want to give you. You just physically can't do that to him. You have to pick and choose those moments. They chose perfectly last week. They've got to get a running game going. I don't know if that's Joe Irvin, the freshman, coming in and playing a bunch. Jordan Brown maybe will be back. I don't think so. You know, Gilbert's good. They've got to find something. They've got to be able to build the structure of an offense, because without that running game, everything else is just kind of piecemeal.
I throw Skylar into that running game. He has to be a part of the running game. We saw it last week that, he had, 10 carries?
Yeah.
And that's important. I mean, everybody saw it. When the quarterback had a designed run play, K-State was able to move the ball.
They lulled them into thinking they weren't going to do it.
Yeah, that's what, we kind of talked about. Either they're saying they're not going to run them because they don't want teams to know they're going to run them, or they're just not going to run them and they're telling everybody they're not going to run them, so no teams prepare for it. And obviously TCU didn't really prepare for him to run the ball very much, and he burned them pretty hard. I think that they need to come out and run some zone read with Skylar this week. I think that's something that, they haven't seen. K-State hasn't run hardly any zone read. Run some RPOs with the zone read where Skylar has the option to run it or throw it. Have some design runs for Skylar Thompson. I don't care if it's a QB power. I mean, that's the only chance you're going to have in this game, I think, is, for one, it'll loosen up the defense and it'll keep them honest on Skylar. So it's going to take at least one defender out of the play and gives your front five a little bit more time maybe to actually open up some holes, because just running straight power I and ISOs and the zones, this offensive line has shown so far this year that they just can't create the holes for the running backs that are needed to sustain and to have big yards. So you got to do some other things, whether it's the jet motion and run some jet sweeps. You just got to throw some different things at the defense so that their eyes aren't just focused on the running back and where the running back's going. They got to be aware of what else is going on around them.
Right. You were a special teams whiz for Kansas State. You were very involved in special teams. Kansas State won that game against TCU with special teams. They made enough big plays in special teams. The punter was fantastic. They got it done. How good was that to see that special teams were such an emphatic part of that victory?
I was like, wow, they did something on special teams. It just seems like special teams just doesn't have the fire that it used to have over, the Coach Snyder tenure. It just seems like it's just there. We'll just get through it, hopefully not make a turnover or a penalty or something, shoot us in the foot, get the ball back in our offense hands. And that's just, for me personally, that's not the way I would be coaching a team, especially like a team like Kansas State. Right. Your special teams has to be part of your offense or has to be part of your defense. You've got to do whatever you can to try to create short fields, create points. Thank gosh they have a great punter who can flip a field in a heartbeat and make teams work for it, because if they didn't have a very good punter last week, and TCU would have had the ball a bunch of times with the short field.
Yep.
And so, he might be the MVP of this team so far, and it's sad to say.
Usually when that happens, it's a really bad team. K-State could end up in a bowl game, and your punter still will be the MVP. He's that good at flipping the field. He did it to TCU almost every possession.
Yeah, and you got to give some credit to the coverage guys. All right, coverage guy here. They got to go down and cover those punts too. And when he's kicking them as far as he does,
not easy.
It's not easy, but he gets so much hang time on the ball that it allows all of his cover guys to get down there and either make a play or get a fair catch signal.
Well, it's going to be interesting when the Cats mess with the Sooners Saturday at Bill Snyder Family Stadium. I don't have a good feeling about it. Why would I? Why would anyone go out and predict a victory? This is a mismatch, but there's places K-State can get better and come out of this a more complete football team as they head into a very manageable stretch of games as they head to Kansas next weekend for what turns out to be probably a huge game for both programs.
This is one of those games where you go in to win
and now it's time to break down the game between the Wildcats and TCU.
But if something gets out of whack, just try not to get anybody hurt.
Right. Go play some guys. You got some freshmen.
Play some different guys. Play some younger guys that maybe haven't used their 4 games or, aren't going to be playing any other Big 12 game, meaningful games that, it'd be nice to get them some reps in the second half. But, obviously I want K-State to come out, play well, play hard, be in the game. It's just from what Oklahoma's shown so far this year, I find it hard to see that happening on Saturday.
And now we bring in Brien Hanley. Mr. Hanley, he handles our post-game show, helps us out with the pre-game show, and he is one of our many very good football analysts with GoPowercat.com. Brien, should they just bother to play this game? Maybe just call it off, have some light snacks. If you're a player, you kind of get sick of hearing this, but as an analyst, you got to be realistic, but I bet as a player, boy, you get sick of it.
Well, you do. You get tired of hearing that you can't win. First of all, how many times have K-State played an Oklahoma team where the answer, they can't beat them. Yep. And then we go and beat them. So it's happened a couple of times. Now, granted, we had more talent than what we do in this game. But, as a player, you do get sick and tired of hearing it. And I'm going to expect a spirited effort, at least early in this game.
I hope so. I thought last week was they're off rock bottom and they're heading upwards now. It wasn't great, but, as you look back, you mentioned it in the post-game podcast, it was a pretty darn good defensive effort. Still some tackling issues, which will, be critical in this game. But win or lose, they have an opportunity to improve upon the product they've been putting out there during Big 12 play, certainly, and, maybe build a little confidence going into the back half of the season.
Yeah, we're playing at home. That's the first thing. We have an opportunity to showcase ourselves, on a national stage to where, hey, you don't know what can happen. Just go out there and play football. Play as hard as you can. Hey, you get some turnovers here or there. You get the confidence up. The game gets tight. Maybe Oklahoma gets tight. Who knows what can happen? So I'm looking forward to the opportunity to seeing the guys go out there and seeing what they can do against because Oklahoma is really, really good in all phases. Yeah. They are a really good football team. So I am excited. I know there might be some doubters out there about what can go on, but I'm excited to see the guys put their best foot forward and see what can happen.
Well, everything about the Oklahoma offense is Lincoln Riley good. They've got another great quarterback in Jalen Hurts who might be the leading candidate to win yet another Heisman. They've got a good running back. They've got a great receiver. So I don't want to talk about that. They're great. I get it. The difference with this Oklahoma team is defense, and they're playing really good defense, top 25 defense, when in the past they haven't even been top 100. So now there's plenty of room for not being at the top of your game offensively and being outscored by someone because your defense can't stop them. They're winning games by just 31 points a game. That's all, because their defense is great.
Yeah, it's a really complete team. They're flying around. They're tackling. That's what Oklahoma hasn't done in the past. They haven't tackled well. They always had the athletes, and whether the scheme was good or not, they just didn't tackle people. Well, now they're tackling people. They're reckless, abandoned tackling people, and their defensive line is crushing people. That's one thing. Our offensive line is going to have to be on their P's and Q's. I mean, this is going to be a really big test for them because Oklahoma's front seven is real good. So
big, aggressive, and fast. Yeah, that's all it is.
We're gonna have to figure it out. But I'm excited. I'm not a guy that doesn't believe that we can win. I'm thinking go out there, put your best foot forward, put some pressure, some game pressure on them, and see what happens.
I'm with you. Everyone has a chance. That's why you play the games. Cliche of the week right there. I'm just really frightful that this could get out of hand. And,
right.
How do you tell your team, no matter what happens, you got to, just move on because they could get their feelings hurt.
Well, and that's the thing. You got to try at some point. You got to try to keep the game close. You got to try to keep. But if it does get out of hand, then you almost have to. And I know this is bad to say, but you got to look at it as a scrimmage type thing where guys don't get hurt at that point. Because we got a lot of season left, still got a lot of goals that we can accomplish. So if the game gets out of hand early, and that's a possibility, okay, let's take a step back. Let's treat it like this, and let's just get through the game without getting guys injured.
Yep, exactly right. Jalen Hurts can make you miss. You can't even get a hold of him. He would be an All-American in touch football.
He's a lot better, Tim, than what he was at Alabama. I know a lot of it's the scheme, and I was thinking the same thing you were. Hey, he can't throw. He hasn't shown he's been able to throw, and now look at him. It's unbelievable.
It's like Lincoln Riley's the quarterback whisperer because I watched Kyler Murray warm up and play a little bit a couple years ago, and he didn't look very good and very accurate. I thought they'd drop off, and then boom, he wins the Heisman Trophy. And now Jalen Hurts come in. Oh, he's not as good as advertised. There's a reason he lost the job. He's a runner. He can't throw it that well. And oh my God, it's the closest thing to Michael Bishop I have seen. He's
absolutely
big,
incredible.
He's fast. He's an elusive runner with a cannon of an arm. It's just not fair. I feel sorry for opponents, and now I feel bad about 98. I'm sorry. I'm sorry K-State did that to everyone because it really is amazing.
I mean, he's really good. I mean, I saw Michael up close. And the thing that Michael got really good at between year one and year two was his accuracy. And it looks like Jalen Hurts has gotten good at his accuracy, which makes it even more ridiculous.
It is. K-State's offensive line, no matter who they're playing this week, whether it's going back and getting Bowling Green again or playing KU or Oklahoma, you got to be better. They've just got to get their act together. No matter what happens, K-State needs this O-line to play at a higher clip, don't they?
Yeah, they haven't played well the last several weeks, and it shows because the offense hasn't moved. I know the whole cliche thing is the offensive line is the backbone, and you can't do anything without it. Well, you've seen the K-State's offense. We haven't been able to do much. We can't run in the football anymore. So we got to get back to doing what we do best. And if it's tricking them, then it's tricking them. Right. If it's moving guys around all over the place, and then that's what it is. But we got to get back, and those guys got to win those one-on-one matchups because you can't double-team everybody. So there's going to be some times where guys have to win those one-on-one matchups. And if they're not able to do that, the same thing is going to happen that's happened the last 3 games. We're not going to be able to run the football.
How do you defend this OU offense? If you go man on the outside and try to take away Hurts and keep someone on a spying expedition against a guy they may not be able to tackle anyhow, you got CeeDee Lamb running around out there. And, a guy with the great name of Charleston Rambo. They're both averaging more than 22 yards a catch. How is that possible to have 2 dudes doing that?
The thing is you got to be able to get pressure with just 4 guys.
Yep.
You can't go and try to blitz them every time. Every now and then you can catch them in situations where you can do that, but you got to be able to get pressure with 4 guys. If you're not going to do that, they're going to get 500 yards against you. I mean, they may do that anyway, but they're going to do it in their sleep if you can't get pressure with 4. That's the key. You got to be able to get pressure with 4, because then you have the ability to bracket some of those guys, have a linebacker underneath with a safety over top, or a corner trailing, as they're running with the safety over top. You have the opportunity to do those things, but without pressure from the front 4, I mean, I'm just being honest, you literally have no chance.
Brien, appreciate it very much. I'll dial you up as soon as this game's over, and we'll do a post-game podcast after the Cats and Sooners tangle at Bill Snyder Family Stadium on Saturday morning.
Look forward to it.
It's off to Vegas we go to meet up with Kelly Stewart. Kelly in Vegas all over social media. You can find her at wagertalk.com. Your mini-you did a nice job on the video last week, but it wasn't you, and I also suspect she's colorblind.
Oh, my God, you're hilarious. No, she's great. I will be back for the video this week. She had to fill in for me. I had to move my schedule stuff around, so I told her to wear her purple-colored shirt. She didn't listen well, but I'm glad K-State got the win over TCU.
A little surprising. A little surprising. I was pleased to see K-State found a way to win even with their imperfections, and I think that was a good sign. Not that really matters going into this week. I think they could play an exceptional game and still lose this. What is the spread right now? I saw it open at 21.5. It went up?
So it opened here. Circa Sports is a new sportsbook here in town. It opened 19.
Wow.
And it got bet up quickly, so quickly that even everywhere else opened 21.
Yeah.
And now we're sitting at 23 and a half. I don't think bookmakers move this one to 24. They know that they'll get too much K-State money. I may end up on K-State in this game. They're on my long list circled here. K-State has done well against the spread, covered 6 of their last 8 games. Oklahoma's a machine. They're going to get money regardless of what this number is. We know that. We've seen them get money from the public all season long, and rightfully so. Jalen Hurts running the best, most prolific offense in the country. I think a lot of people are ready to give the national championship to Ohio State now that Tua's hurt. But don't count out Jalen Hurts here. And the Sooners, this is a lot of points, though, on the road. I was kind of complaining about this on social media when they announced it was going to be a noon Eastern start time. I'm like, God, can't K-State get a nighttime game? I mean, Manhattan, Kansas, Bill Snyder Family Stadium is so much more electric when everybody's had all day to drink.
Well, there's been such a shift in college football. All of a sudden, this 11 a.m. slot is thought of by the networks as the place to be. I don't think fans feel that way. Programs don't feel that way. Poor Oklahoma spending the entire month of October playing 11 a.m. games. They're not very happy about it, but it is now viewed as the time slot, and this game is on ABC, which I don't know if is good news for K-State, but they want to show Oklahoma because Jalen Hurts and that offense are so good. But they play defense now, and it makes them really scary.
But you know who also plays defense and is not getting much credit for it? Kansas State.
Yeah.
I know that Sanders and Chubba Hubbard ran all over K-State, but I do believe this K-State defense is improving week by week. I also think that this is a lot of points on the road. Again, I'm not rushing to the window to back K-State just yet. I think K-State might surprise some people this week. This is their Super Bowl, for lack of better words. They're going to get told all week long by every talking head on the media that they're going to get the bricks beat off of them.
Including me.
And, it's Oklahoma's game to lose, not K-State's. K-State's already, I guarantee at the start of the season, circled this one as a loss, and they've won a couple other games that were circled as losses. Mississippi State, obviously catching points versus TCU. No, I wasn't impressed with them in that 2-game stretch, Oklahoma State and Baylor, but don't be surprised to get K-State's best game here.
Well, hopefully TCU represented an upturn. They still made some mistakes. They're still not blocking as well as they need to. They're still not tackling as well as they need to, but they were better and certainly good enough with the help of special teams to win a game. So maybe if that improvement increases, the problem with Jalen Hurts is you can do everything right and he can still make you miss because he is Michael Bishop special in terms of being a running back who can throw the ball like a true quarterback.
That is a great comparison, Mr. Fitzgerald. Geez, Michael Bishop-esque. I'm going to use that one today on some of my media spots. Yeah, I'm going to take the points here with the better defense. We've talked about K-State's defense at times has shown some greatness, and I really do think they show up here. And speaking of defense, the more I start to look at this, the more I like the under, actually. K-State, 7 of their last 8 games have went under an average combined score of 42.5 points. This one is an interesting total for Oklahoma, sitting here at 58 when all of the other totals have been in the 60s all season long. I think that's a very indicative sign of what bookmakers think is going to happen in Manhattan.
Decent defense from the Wildcats, but even when they have problems, the opponents don't go 40-plus. They kind of keep them contained, so to speak. It's going to be a supreme test for the Wildcats, and we'll see how it comes out. 11 a.m. kick at Bill Snyder Family Stadium. The rest of the Big 12, Kelly, it's an intriguing slate of games. What jumps out at you?
Ooh, actually, so Marco D'Angelo, who you guys will see on the Wager Talk videos with me, and I were just sitting across talking about how interesting this Texas Tech-Kansas line is. 3.5 for some spots. This is the mother of all spots for KU. They had Texas on the ropes, couldn't get it done. Man, that's the first time I've cheered for KU in a long time. I was sitting at dinner with some buddies, watching it on the phone, getting yelled at by everybody saying, how rude are you, sitting at this nice dinner and watching a football game on your phone. Wouldn't be the first time, won't be the last. I think Texas Tech rolls this KU team. I think KU kind of is going to be a little fat and sassy. How excited they were. Remember, I know that Cliff Kingsbury was head coach of this Texas Tech team, but Texas Tech has owned KU. They have just blown them out in the last 3 spots, and I wouldn't expect anything less than a blowout here in Lawrence, Kansas.
So you think Tech's going to go big in this one?
I think Tech is going to not for 1 second pull a Texas Longhorn move and overlook this KU team. We've seen teams over the past few years go into Lawrence, have it circled as a W, no sweat, we're 3 touchdown or more favorites. 4-point favorites, Texas Tech. How downright disrespectful is that if you are the Red Raiders? That is probably my favorite Big 12 game of the week. And the rest of the Big 12, I don't really love. I was trying to make a case for TCU over Texas, but again, now that's the flip side. You know, the public's going to remember, here's a Texas team that almost lost KU. Texas is extremely hurt. Again, things we keep hearing in the media. That defense just is Swiss cheese. I wanted, again, to make a case for TCU, but I'm not going to be able to do so there. And really, that's about it. I'm looking at the rest of the schedule.
Oklahoma State at Iowa State, and
I'd love to make a case for the Cowboys against Iowa State, but Iowa State is superseding my expectations. I figured last year as an underdog how well Matt Campbell did, that this year wasn't going to be the same. They lost a lot of guys, and I didn't think he'd be able to reload out of Ames because typically that's what we see. Iowa State, we know that it's similar. Ames is similar to Manhattan. It's hard to get kids to come there. It's hard to get those 4- and 5-star recruits, but man, has he done a good job here. So I don't want to take the points here with Oklahoma State, but again, I'm not ready to lay them here with Iowa State.
So true. Well, it's an intriguing week in Big 12 football. Some stuff's going to get sorted out. We're going to find out if Kansas is legit, if this offense is legit, or did they put everything on film for everyone to see in week 1 of the Brent Dearman era as offensive coordinator. Because rightfully so, they threw everything they could at Texas to try to get that win because that would be program changing, and they couldn't quite get it done, and they did put a lot of stuff out there for everyone to see. It's not brain surgery, it's the run-pass option. RPOs have been all over college football, and once you see their tendencies, if you're disciplined, you can solve it. All
I can hope is K-State doesn't allow that to happen. I know that's going to be pretty much a deciding factor if K-State makes a bowl. I'm obviously circling a loss versus Oklahoma. Would like to get the win over Oklahoma State, the win over KU. And there's a couple other coin flips in there, but I think that KU game is going to be very indicative if K-State makes a bowl or not.
I agree. Very good. Her name's Kelly Stewart. If you need a proxy service, look up Kelly for that. And she is a K-State graduate, and we go way back. I tell you what, Kelly, I'm very happy that you're doing the Wager Talk videos for us. It's a really neat addition. But I hope we can continue to do this long enough where Kansas State's back in the national conversation while you're doing those videos.
You know, that would be a fun time. 2012 was a fun year to be doing media in regards to Kansas State. And I have good hopes. I talked to some former players that played when I was in Manhattan, and they said, are you buying the Chris Klieman hype? And I said, as of right now, yes. I think he's making strides. I am liking what I'm seeing out of Manhattan, Kansas, and hopefully, like you said, we can get back into that top 25 national title contention over the next couple of years.
Well, I think last week's win over TCU was a symptom of a bunch of players and coaches who expect to win because they figured out a way to win a game where they were far from perfect, and you can make an argument that TCU had played better throughout the course of the game, but doesn't matter. You got the win.
We'll take it.
We've heard from the GoPowercat staff as well as our GPC analysts as Kansas State prepares to run headlong into the Big 12's seemingly unmovable object, the fifth-ranked Oklahoma Sooners. Subscribers to GoPowercat.com can read my 5 Keys to Victory analysis Friday at GPC. But for now, let's cut to the prediction. Last week, I picked against the Wildcats, and they indeed proved me wrong with a much-needed victory over TCU. This quest is less about winning and more about showing progress. What's amazing is K-State can play well defensively and still give up more points than the Wildcats' struggling offense can cover. My prediction is Oklahoma 34, K-State 13. That will do it for this week's Powercat Pregame Podcast, sponsored by Robbins Motor Company, where they strive to earn lifetime business and build relationships, selling quality cars, trucks, vans, and SUVs, and offering top-notch parts and service. I will return to the WTC Gig-Powered Studios following Saturday's game between the Cats and Sooners, and GoPowercat football analyst Brien, Hanley, and I will break down what took place between the Sooners and Cats with our Powercat Postgame Podcast, sponsored by Caddyshack Golf. That's Saturday right here at GoPowercat.com, your online leader for independent and professional K-State sports coverage for more than 20 years. I am GoPowercat publisher Tim Fitzgerald. It's K-State versus fifth-ranked Oklahoma, Saturday, 11 a.m. inside Bill Snyder Family Stadium.
You've been listening to the Powercat Pregame Podcast presented by Robbins Motor Company. Powercat Podcast. All rights reserved. GoPowercat.com and Spirit Street Publishing.
With Blue Link Plus, you can access your Hyundai Tucson Limited remotely. Doors unlocked, temperature set, lost car found.
There it is.
Get complimentary class-leading Blue Link Plus. Call 562-314-4603 for complete details.